History was made on today's date. Stay tuned for an American Minute with Bill Federer.
Today, April 6, 1917, the United States entered World War I by declaring war on Germany. Within the next 2 years, America enlisted 4 million soldiers and spent $35 billion, resulting in an Allied victory. In a National Day of Prayer proclamation, President Woodrow Wilson stated, "In view of the entrance of our nation into the vast and awful war which now afflicts the greater part of the world, I set apart a day upon which our people should offer concerted prayer to Almighty God for His divine aid in the success of our arms."
This has been an American Minute with Bill Federer. For a free transcript, call American Minute at 1-888-USA-WORD.
VCY America presents Crosstalk, a nationwide call-in program discussing issues that have an effect on our families, our communities, our churches, our nation, and our world. Crosstalk, an opportunity for you to voice your concerns for biblical principles. And now live by satellite and around the world on the internet at vcyamerica.org. Here is today's Crosstalk.
Friends, thank you for joining us on Crosstalk. Very important topic and issue today. Those of you who are regular listeners to Crosstalk know that we have conducted many, many interviews warning about Islam. I mean, just recently, William J. Federer was with us on the program, a warning of dawah, otherwise known as civilization jihad. And Bill gave the steps of such jihad as being immigrate, increase, and eliminate. Immigrate into a city, a county, a state, a country, increase your numbers, then eliminate either individuals who or those systems that Islam is opposed to. Indeed, former Muslim Shahram Hadian has been on this program, warning that Islam is a government legal system that seeks to be above all other governments and overthrow our laws. For instance, Islam does not allow for the free exercise of religion. That is well known when their numbers put them in the upper house in a locality. Very difficult being a Christian in a Muslim country. Persecution is great. But Islam's influence is being felt in so many areas of the country, and one targeted area has been the state of Texas. And we understand tomorrow and continuing on this week that there is the meetings going on with the State Board of Education on whether to stick with their pro-American curricula for K through 12 social studies or to adopt a CARE curriculum. Now, by CARE, I'm referring to the Council on American Islamic Relations. Our guest today said this could be the most important battle in Texas since the Alamo. Our topic today is the Islamification of Texas schools, and joining us is Frank Gaffney, president of the Institute for the American Future, president and CEO of Save the Persecuted Christians, vice chairman for Committee on the Present Danger of China. He's also a speaker on the Secure Freedom Minute. Frank did act as an assistant secretary of defense in the Reagan Pentagon. He is the author of several books, including The Indictment, Prosecuting the Chinese Communist Party and Friends for Crimes Against America, China, and the World, and Sharia, The Threat to America, A Bridge. Frank, thanks for joining us today on Crosstalk.
It's a delight to be with you and such an important time for a conversation about all of this, Jim. Thank you for having me.
Indeed. So, Frank, unfold for our listeners today this battle that's underway in Texas right now as it pertains to the social studies curricula. We have many in Texas listening in right now. They may be totally unaware of what's going on in their state. Tell us what's happening.
Well, it's important that people in this state understand it, especially, Jim, but as we'll discuss, everybody who has a kid, a kindergartner right on up through 12th grader in America should have an interest in this too, because the nature and quality of their education may be impacted as well by what's taking place in Austin this week under the auspices of something called the State Board of Education. There are 15 members of this board. They're elected to represent people across the state. They have, in the past months, in 2025, adopted a curriculum that was a corrective to, decades of problems, really, with what kids were being taught in social studies, which, of course, is, the current lingo for things like history and civics and, citizenship, really. But they sort of get short shrift under this rubric of social studies. And what has been particularly problematic is there's been an awful lot of, I call it cultural Marxism and Sharia supremacism injected, particularly in recent years, under the guise of inclusiveness and, avoiding Islamophobia and the like. Well, these are, as a practical matter, techniques that are designed to divide us and weaken us, and most especially to leave our kids ill-equipped to do what they must do. My old boss, Ronald Reagan, always would make the point, every generation faces an existential threat to freedom. It's not passed on through the bloodstream. Right. It has to be fought for and protected and then turned over to the next generation to do the same.
Right.
And that's what we are facing right now, is this generation is going to be confronting, if we fail, especially, if we don't clean up our act and do things like this State Board of Education has done to take corrective action, they're going to be hopelessly ill-prepared to meet their time's existential threat to freedom. That's for sure. So one of the things that we're hopeful of is that the board will stand with the so-called curriculum framework that they adopted last year and the standards that have been developed in the interval to implement them, which in turn translate into textbooks, which ultimately are used in Texas, but because of Texas' vast market, typically wind up being impactful in some 25 other states across the country as well. And that would be the best case. The alternative is that groups like the one you mentioned, a designated terrorist organization called Council on American Islamic Relations, so designated by both Governor Greg Abbott of Texas and Governor Ron DeSantis of Florida, will have their way and get all that cultural Marxist stuff and that Sharia supremacist pedagogy baked back into the curriculum, and that must not be allowed to happen.
And Frank, you mentioned Governor Abbott. I mean, it was just last November, just a few months ago, that he designated Muslim Brotherhood and the Council on American Islamic Relations as foreign terrorist organizations and transnational criminal organizations. One wonders, how could CARE be gaining such a foothold in Texas?
Well, the trouble is, unfortunately, they have had such a foothold. The question really is, Jim, how can they continue to have it?
Right.
The governor said, basically, they weren't allowed to own real property in the state of Texas. Well, if he were to start rolling that real property up, their hold on Texas, their infrastructure in this state, their ability to use it to dominate the Muslim community and promote, as I say, this agenda of Sharia, which is toxic. It's totalitarian. I actually think of it as demonic. But it's really a death cult when all is said and done. This isn't a religion. This is a truly horrific, demonic political, military, legal ideology, and it must be rooted out, and CARE is the perfect place to start with it, as well as the mothership of CARE, the Muslim Brotherhood.
Now, friends, I want you to realize there's been a lot of things happening in the background. I saw on Texas Scorecard, they just reported last month there was a forum. It was sponsored by the Texas Coalition on Human Rights and the River Oaks Islamic Center that claimed that, well, the current standards in Texas, and I'm quoting, they said they promote exclusionary and Islamophobic narratives. And Frank, that's something where they will try to, if you speak against something, then you're Islamophobic, and we have to fight this Islamophobia going on. But here they have been working behind the wings, or behind the scenes, anyways, from the general public, in a way to try and weave in a curricula that is going to cast a bright a nod of approval on Islam.
Yeah, I just have to level set with you, Jim, on this idea of Islamophobia. Phobia, of course, which is derived from the Greek word, is an unreasoned fear. Well, the truth of the matter is, people who are fearful of Islam, or its practitioners at least, particularly the Sharia supremacist ones, are not unreasoned in their fear. They're right to be fearful. They've been terrified, really, by these guys, because terror is what works when you're in the business of conquering other people. That's what the perfect man, as they call him, Muhammad, was all about: conquest and using terrifying techniques like beheading and rape and torture and mass murder were the techniques that this guy, who is supposed to be, a revered leader of a great Abrahamic faith, we're endlessly told, there's nothing phobic about being very, very opposed to what he's doing.
Yes.
That's properly understood what we all need to do if we're to survive it.
Matter of fact, Governor Abbott, he indicated this. He said that the Muslim Brotherhood and CAIR have long made it its goal to forcibly impose Sharia and establish Islam's mastership of the world. And Frank, he's not exaggerating when he says that.
No, sadly he's not. And I have to say, I have been critical of Greg Abbott for some time, and I'm a little bit still, because I think what he has been saying has been very important, very helpful, that designation, not least. But he does need to follow through. It's the old difference between the talk the talk and walk the walk.
Yes.
We need him to be acting on the basis of these important designations and his other warnings. And I'm prayerful that he will. And it's one of the things that we're trying to encourage with a project that I'm happy to talk to you about if we have a minute to do so.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we are just a couple of minutes from the break, but I just want our listeners to understand there is actually a strategy that's going on to indoctrinate children. And that's really what this is about, is you talked about the importance of reaching the next generation, and they have to be, guardians of our liberties, guardians of our freedom, et cetera, to pass that on to the next generation. That's what Islam is trying to do here, is to indoctrinate children. Am I reading that right?
You certainly are. And unfortunately, it's not just the adherence to Sharia. It's their allies for the moment in what I would describe as the hard left. It's communists, some of them Chinese communists or their fronts. It's teachers' unions. It's the American Civil Liberties Union. Mm-hmm. It's even the NAACP, for heaven's sakes, that have thrown in with these Islamists seeking to dominate the world, including this country, under their, theocratic rule. These others are by and large, secular or even atheistic, and yet they're making common cause, not because they want to see Sharia prevail, but because they've got their own totalitarian globalist agenda, and they think they'll win if it can be advanced with the help of these other guys, these jihadists, in taking us out, which is what needs to be done, because we stand in the way of what they're hoping to, achieve.
Friends, what he's talking about is this red-green axis that you've heard about here before on the program as well, and joining forces with communist China and Islam and those that espouse these ideals, and it's gaining a foothold in many cities for the first time, but it's advancing in others. We're going to take a quick break, and friends, what I'd like you to have available to you is a pen or a pencil, a sheet of paper. Frank's going to be giving us some information. It's not just cursing the darkness, but there's solutions. What what you can do, how you can be proactive in this very aspect of this attempt to Islamify Texas schools and the children that are part of this, and your neighbors, the next generation, and school districts next to this as well. We'll be back in a minute here on Crosstalk.
Back to Genesis with Dr. John Morris, scientist with the Institute for Creation Research. Dr. Morris, did the Ice Age really happen?
Yes, indeed, Chris. There's a great deal of evidence that the Ice Age really happened. It wasn't long ago. It was at the end of Noah's flood. It probably took several hundred years for the Earth to settle back down into the equilibrium we now experience. That readjustment period was primarily the Ice Age. The real key for the Ice Age is more evaporation from the ocean waters, making huge storms of snowfall possible. But the continents were cold, making the storms violent and prolonged. Also, late in the flood was a time of great volcanism, meaning that the Earth's atmosphere was cloudy and shielded the Earth from the sun. So there was more snowfall, less snow melt, and the ice built up. This would have happened in the centuries following the flood. And that's the flood mentioned back in Genesis.
Thanks, Dr. John. For more information, visit us on the web at icr.org. I'm Chris O'Brien. Thanks for tuning in.
You're listening to Crosstalk on VCY America. Frank Gaffney is with us today on the broadcast. And friends, a warning about this attempt to Islamify Texas schools. But keep in mind, when they adopt a curricula for Texas, it's not going to stay there. It's going to go into many other states as well who buy their curriculum from Texas book publishers. And we're here discussing this very week. Some important meetings. Matter of fact, public hearing being held tomorrow on this very matter. And Frank, this really boils down. We've got more that we can discuss regarding this, but let's also make sure we get into action steps as to what people can do. Number one is to inform individuals what's taking place. But after that information comes, what guidance, what steps can people take to let their voice be made known on this matter?
Well, let's start with the issue of this meeting tomorrow. Today, if everyone listening to this program would do one thing, it could be enormously helpful, Jim, and that is to go to a website that we've established called bansharia.com. That's BANSHARIA.com. And right there on the home page, when you click on it, you'll see a letter. It's what technically is known as an Align Act campaign, but you basically can just, with a click of a mouse or two, you can send a letter to every member of the school board, the State Board of Education in the state of Texas, within seconds, putting them on notice that you don't want them to do either to the students in Texas or indirectly to students elsewhere across this country what CARE and its leftist allies have in mind for us, which is indoctrinating those kids about the evil things those folks sponsor and promote and espouse on the one hand, and instead continue what the State Board of Education did last year, which is to say, we want to equip kids, students in Texas, and yes, indirectly students elsewhere, with a factual understanding of America, its founding. I think you said this at the beginning, the importance of its founding documents, the people who brought them about, and not least, of course, to the contrary, most importantly, the God who has given us the freedoms that are enshrined in those founding documents, and Judeo-Christian values that are, baked into their DNA. All of those things are on the line here, and so we are hopeful, we're prayerful, really, that people will take action right now to let the board members understand, and in particular there's a woman by the name of Pam Little, who may well be the deciding vote, to stick with the existing pro-America, pro-freedom, responsible educational framework, rather than opt for one that will have all of these toxic knock-on effects. Specifically, it will, I think, further insinuate into Texas public education, K through 12, the worst kind of, supremacism, whether it's of the communist kind or the Islamic kind, to the detriment of those freedoms and all that we hold dear.
Friends, again, that website is bansharia.com. Sharia is spelled SHARIA. bansharia.com. That's the website Frank just mentioned here, and there is a point of action when you first get on that page, right at the top of the page, and it's pretty self-explanatory from there to get your message through to those that are part of this Board of Education. That is bansharia.com. Frank, what else? You said this is, perhaps step number one.
It is step number one. Step number two is something that we've built based on the wild success. Jim, I'm sure you're aware of it. Certainly, I'm sure your Texas audience at the very least is. On the 3rd of March, the vote on a ballot measure, Proposition 10, as it was called, on the Republican primary ballot in the state of Texas, resulted in a breathtaking outcome. The Proposition 10 consisted of only 5 words. Quote, Texas should prohibit Sharia law, unquote. And what it resulted in was, by a margin of 95 to 5, 1.9 out of 2 million Texas voters said they wanted Sharia prohibited in their state. So the follow-on to that is we're trying very hard now to make sure that every candidate for office, not just in Texas, but across the country ideally, not just for, exalted federal offices or even high-level state ones, but every candidate be asked to take what we call the Sharia-free pledge. And it simply says that a pledge to, their constituents, if elected, and the American people to do everything possible to prevent Sharia from being imposed on them. And that is the least that we can ask them to do. And when they do make that pledge, our purpose is going to be to hold them to it in the follow-up, offices and sessions in which they are going to be serving.
And is there a website on this as well?
Same one, bansharia.com, and it's got a box there where you can just go to the Sharia-free pledge, and there's also a place where you can express your own view on the subject if you feel strongly about it. But what we're really focused on, like a laser, is trying to make sure that people who are interacting over the next few months in the run-up to the November elections with all kinds of candidates will simply make a point of asking them to take the Sharia-free pledge.
Frank, I have in my hand it's like an op-ed, a short op-ed that came out from CARE, Texas, and from one Shaima Zayan. I probably have mispronounced his name here, but it declares himself to be an American Muslim civil rights advocate and a former Texas certified teacher, and he said this: representing CARE, Texas, I have focused my testimony on the contributions of the Islamic civilization and the influence of Muslims on Texas, the United States, and the world. We cannot simply erase Muslims from history because we don't like them. Despite presenting respectful and factual testimonies, I have faced a threat of violence that required a Department of Public Safety officer to escort me to my car. He said he's been threatened with deportation. He said I have been falsely accused of pushing Sharia on students. called a terrorist and had my testimony mischaracterized by board representatives whose constituency elected them to ensure Texas students are taught accurate and honest facts. Now, he goes on in that as well, but Frank, specifically where he is talking about giving factual testimony, that he's been falsely accused of pushing Sharia. Isn't that what Islam is? They follow the teachings of Sharia, and he's also talking about we can't simply erase Muslims from history because we don't like them.
Well, there's a lot to unpack there, Jim. There are Muslims who do not adhere to Sharia. I think probably there are a lot of them in this country because I believe many of them came here to get away from it in the land in which they were born. The people who are the authorities of Islam, however, and those who are following the model of what they call the perfect man, namely the Prophet Muhammad, are the leaders of Islam. Make no mistake about it. They're scholars, they're imams, they're political figures, and they have a term for those other Muslims, the ones who don't follow Sharia. They call them apostates. And under Sharia, apostasy is a very dangerous thing. It can get you killed because it is a capital offense. So typically we don't hear much from those Muslims who aren't all in for Sharia. Mm-hmm. And there's some reason to believe that, if push comes to shove, they'll throw in with the ones who are. But they certainly are under pressure to conform from the Muslim Brotherhood and front groups like CARE. And as to this question about, violence and threats of violence and, false representations of what these guys are saying, obviously there may be some examples of that, and it's to be condemned, not endorsed. I'm just saying that however often that happens, it is a trivial fraction compared to what is the standard practice of Sharia supremacists. Mm-hmm. As we talked about earlier, terrifying the rest of us into conformity and bullying Muslims, by the way, so that they do not break ranks and say, no, I want to live under the Constitution of the United States, not Sharia law.
Yeah, and the two are not compatible.
They are utterly incompatible.
Right.
Exactly right. And we have one that by its own definition is the supreme law of the land, and that is the Constitution of the United States. It is unconstitutional to be promoting another, let alone one that is designed to destroy our Constitution.
Right. I mean, the First Amendment does not hold up under Islam, does not hold up under Sharia. And Frank, the part of the poison in this is that there will be the attempt to make Islam look so appealing, but it will not talk about things like what we've discussed here. It will not talk about striking the necks of the infidels, Christians and Jews. It will not tell students that the highest calling in Islam is martyrdom. There are many, many things of Islam and Sharia, and really the women are nothing more than possessions. That kind of education will not come through, but that will be just totally ignored while they try to put on a great public relations face for Islam.
They're skilled at this. In fact, there's a book that is used in the comparative religion classes across this country, which is entitled The Quran, the Early Verses. And the reason that's important, Jim, as you I'm sure know, is that the later verses, that is to say the last parts of Muhammad's life, the trajectory of his life, went from being peaceable and tolerant in those recitations, as they call them, from an angel, to being virulently intolerant and toxic. They don't teach those in introductions to Islam. They want you to get hooked. They want you to profess to be a Muslim convert before they let you know that really it's virulently intolerant and toxic, as I say.
Friends, our phone number to Crosstalk today, 800-733-9829. If you have a question you'd like to ask of our guest today on this topic or a brief comment, 1-800-733-9829. More information to unfold after the break. You're listening to Crosstalk.
The Bible follows the rise and fall of kingdoms and governments, covers millennia of ancient history, and reveals God's plan for humanity through powerful accounts that still speak today. In the hardcover book, Charting the Bible Chronologically, authors Tommy Ice and Ed Heinzen team up to provide readers a panoramic view of the events recorded in Scripture, all laid out in chronological order. This book takes you from the words, "in the beginning," all the way to the New Jerusalem. With 40-plus color charts, you will see timelines of biblical history, pre-flood genealogy, Israel, overviews of major empires, the life of Christ, God's judgments, and a master fold-out chart of the entire Bible. It's a vital resource for new believers and Bible scholars alike. Charting the Bible Chronologically. Available for a donation of $30 or more to VCY. Call 1-800-729-9829.
This is Crosstalk on VCY America, and a very important week this is in the state of Texas as a state board of education is meeting, and there is an attempt to Islamify the Texas school curriculum, specifically the social studies curriculum. And we're talking today with Frank Gaffney pertaining to this. We understand a public hearing taking place tomorrow in Austin. And friends, you can, Frank has a website here. You can get more information on this, but also to participate in getting a message through to members of this State Board of Education. His website, bansharia.com, bansharia.com. And just below that issue, you will also find information regarding the matter of having candidates sign a Sharia-free pledge. So that information before us here. Our number to Crosstalk, 800-733-9829. And, Frank, something else here in Texas, I think it's important to know just what is happening in the state. We've talked about the attempts for these Islamic cities, and now we also have a growing number of Ramadan proclamations that have been approved by city councils and mayors across Texas. I'm thinking of like McKinney, Texas, DeSoto, Richardson, Cedar Park. We're seeing Houston. I mean, they're just inundated right now with Islam, whether it be the cities or these proclamations. Any idea why Texas is ground zero?
It's ground zero because the jihadists, as I call them, are very clear, as are anybody with a lick of sense, very clear for that matter, as is everyone with a lick of sense, that is. As Texas goes, so goes the nation.
Mm-hmm.
If they are able to help turn Texas blue, as it's called politically, or simply establish, as they have in Europe, a very sizable population. At the moment, it's something on the order of 1.4% of the population of Texas, I believe, is Muslim. But in Europe, where it's 10%, as much as 20% in some places, they are now kingmakers politically in democratic systems. And they increasingly have not just these, these rhetorical displays of submission, which is what it is when you start passing these resolutions that single out a faith's holidays or institutionalize them.
Mm-hmm.
We have done that historically because we were a Judeo-Christian nation, of course, but this is now being insisted upon by people who don't want any part of either Judaism or Christianity. In fact, they murder Christians and Jews whenever they can. They're insisting that their holidays now need to be not only, acknowledged, but made days off from school. in some places.
Right.
In some cases, they're actually suggesting that those Christian holidays shouldn't be commemorated in that fashion. But this is all part of the process. I call it the old analogy of how do you boil a frog?
Yeah.
Slowly
turn up the
incrementally.
Heat. Right.
Turn the heat up gently until it's suddenly cooked. Didn't know it was coming. That we've been frog boiled for a long time in this country, and it's very pronounced in Texas because there's a lot riding on it here, and they are building infrastructure that will accommodate very large population infusions, which have been happening and are going to continue and I think intensify.
Chris is calling from Ohio. Hi, Chris. You're on the air.
Yes. Excuse me. One comment is I was told that when you try to contact the school system, school board, mostly Democratic, even though you may warn them about the dangers of Islam, they'll probably not listen. It won't go through. They'll probably think it's okay. And so I don't know how you handle that.
Okay.
Well, in terms of the State Board of Education, I believe that there's a significant majority of Republicans on it. But the trouble has been that some Republicans are voting with the Democrats on these issues.
Mm-hmm.
So the focus of effort, I think, is on the Republicans for the moment. There are elections underway, and I think there will be a considerable turnover of the board, and I think it will result in a much more robust Republican membership, both just in sheer numbers and in terms of their awareness of this particular problem. Unfortunately, that reality is prompting those in organizations like the Council on American Islamic Relations and the ACLU and the NAACP and on, to make a very, very concerted effort to try to get all of this changing of the curriculum, changing of the standards, changing of the framework, and so on, done before those new folks are elected and are able to, make sure that what's done is a pro-American program.
Chris,
not one hostile to it.
Chris, thank you so much for the call. I think something important, too, and I'm just going to speak to the people in Wisconsin for just a moment, because tomorrow is election day. It's not the congressional primary, but it's the nonpartisan primary across the state of Wisconsin. And there are many, many school districts that are electing school board members tomorrow in our state, and the number of Christians who just don't participate in spring elections or staying home or saying, well, I just don't know anything about them. Friends, you need to be informed on what is taking place. What are their positions? Visit their websites, and especially for Wisconsin, where there are multiple school board seats up for election tomorrow, it's critically important, and also a Supreme Court justice, a 10-year term, critically important to be engaged with those local elections. We've got Mark calling next. Hi, Mark, you're on the air.
Hey, I was just wondering, you had mentioned Greg Abbott, and it sounds like you're somewhat disappointed with him. But my question is pertaining to Ted Cruz, and how well versed is he on Islam and Sharia, and is he to the point of your liking? And my last question would be, how proactive and effective do you think he is in that regard?
Okay, thank you, Mark.
Thank you for the opportunity to clarify. Look, my view is that Greg Abbott has done more than probably anybody else in the state to create an opportunity for people to have an honest discussion of what is going on here. And the concern I have is not so much what he has said. I think, by and large, that's been pretty good. He has said that the Muslim Brotherhood and CAIR, as we discussed, are terrorist organizations and criminal ones at that. He has said that he's going to ban the creation of this so-called epic city. also known now as the Meadow, a Sharia-compliant development project that will, in due course, inevitably become what we see all over Europe, namely a no-go zone, which is essentially off-limits to non-Muslims and even to the authorities, the police and firemen. That's what happens with these things. Yeah. He has also said, and it's important to note this, he has also said that Texas is going to prohibit Sharia law. This was in the immediate aftermath of that 1.9 million vote against Sharia. My issue with Greg Abbott is simply, will he follow through? And there's a test right now because, as I said, in part of his designation, he said CARE and the Muslim Brotherhood may not own real property in the state of Texas. That means that kind of infrastructure, that the mosques, the madrasas, they call them, the schools, the community centers, the front groups, and so on. If he means it, there are specific, concrete things he could do to begin shutting those things down, and encouraging, as by the way, the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, has said, we will deport foreign nationals who glorify jihad. Well, it goes back to something you said, Jim, earlier. They have to do that. Jihad is part and parcel of Sharia. In fact, Sharia commands jihad, and that doesn't mean personal struggle, folks. That means holy war. Now, it can take different forms. Some of it is stealthy and subversive, like that frog boiling we were talking about. Some of it is the toxic, terrifying, violent kind. But whatever form it takes, glorifying it is what jihad and Sharia are all about. So they should be rolled out, in my estimation. The foreign nationals at a bare minimum. Right. And look, there are lots of places in the world where people can practice Sharia to their heart's content.
Yeah, and his question
that's not here.
On Ted Cruz, is Ted more than talk on the issue?
You know, initiated efforts at the federal level to have the Muslim Brotherhood designated as a terrorist group. I had an interesting opportunity to ask him a question the other day, and if I've got just a minute to quickly share this with you, Ted, Jim. This was probably a couple months ago now. Actually, I said, you know, Senator, you're a constitutional expert. What do you say to people who argue that Sharia is a constitutionally protected religious freedom? In our country, you're allowed to practice your religion. The trouble with Sharia is it's about you practicing their religion, not yours, and that's not protected. That's not even allowed.
We've got Jason calling from Texas. Jason, you're on the air.
Yes, I actually thought of one other question when I was sitting there on hold. My first question is, it's my understanding that their laws and their rules are it's okay to lie to anybody that's not a Muslim. So if you create this type of document or whatever that they are going to swear to not support, and then what happens if they start doing it? So that's the first question. The second question is, my understanding that there's one specific attorney that is enrolling or bringing in over 1 million of the Muslims into this country just on his own part. So what can we do to keep that from happening?
Okay. Frank, we're 50 seconds before the break. Go ahead.
Yeah, I can't speak to the second point. I just don't know. I think there are actually lots of people who are facilitating the immigration of Sharia supremacists into our country, and shame on them. On the first question, taqiyya is what they call it. It's lying for the faith. It is not only permissible, it is obliging under Sharia. And that's worrying when people take an oath of office to support and defend the Constitution of the United States, swearing on a Quran which calls them to lie to infidels.
Yeah. Thank you, Jason, for the call here. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll come back to more of your calls here. Again, the website, bansharia.com, bansharia.com. And, Frank, I know you're going to hold accountable those who say, I'm going to vote to ban Sharia, and who take an opposing view down the road. So it'll become a matter of public record in that regard. But, friends, this is something very serious here across the nation right now. We'll take this quick break and be back in just a moment. This is Crosstalk on VCY America.
For the Worldview Report, I'm Brennan House. Our website's worldviewtube.com. Nebuchadnezzar in Daniel chapter 3, as you know, erects an image of gold, and he commands everyone to worship. And what is the cue that they're to do that? Well, there is the sound of the horn, the flute, the harp, and the lyre, and in symphony with all kinds of music. Music, of course, was created by God to be used to glorify him, to praise him, but Satan likes to corrupt many things that are good and great and holy. And he likes to corrupt music. And music, of course, as we know, can be used to manipulate emotions, manufacture unity, muffle dissent, and masquerade a lie as truth. I have many quotes by well-known rockers talking about how they deliberately use music to promote rebellion and chaos. Music should be used to glorify the Lord, to be what is good. Here we see Nebuchadnezzar using it for bad, and Satan does it even today, even in many of our modern churches.
Friends, just a reminder to those involved in the State Board of Education in Texas, taking a vote on that, and you can let your view be known. Bansharia.com is the website. Frank Gaffney with us today discussing this issue, bansharia.com. We have Jim, our next caller. Hi, Jim, you're on the air.
Thank you, gentlemen, very much for this program. I'm very much engaged in this topic. Got two comments and a question. I'll try to make them quick. I'm very close to running for state assembly in our state here in Wisconsin, so keep me in your prayers. I have been in touch with Representative Chip Roy's office in Texas regarding this topic, and he's part of this Sharia-Free America caucus.
Yes.
I think they have about 50 members now, and I asked the gentleman, I said, how many members do you need before you guys actually do something? So we need to be contacting our representatives and say, hey, join us and let's get something done. My question is, I've been trying to get this legislation taken up, some interest on it regarding Muslims and communists being in office, and you just talked about this before the break, about this the oath of office that they take when they're in office to protect and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
Yeah.
And it's like they're supposed to be it's supposed to be a legal binding event that when they take that oath, if they break that oath, they're supposed to be removed from office, from what I understand. Yeah. And so this legislation would be called the Fit to Serve and Accountability Act, whereas if they take that oath of office and they believe in Sharia, they're automatically disqualified from office.
And Jim, did you have a specific?
Can that be done?
Okay, can it be done, Frank?
I don't know that it can. It certainly should be possible, but it's a question of the legalities of it, I suppose. To some extent, you'll find, as we did, by the way, in the State Board of Education, the Attorney General, Ken Paxton, now a candidate for the U.S. Senate seat in Texas, currently occupied by John Cornyn, ruled that the representative of the Council on American Islamic Relations, who was testifying before that Board of Education, was entitled to do so on the basis of First Amendment rights, even though she's part of a terrorist organization. This is one of the things that needs to be lawyered properly, but I think it's a very important idea.
Thank you, Jim, for your call. We've got another Jim calling in. Hi, you're on the air.
Yes, we have a big Muslim family that just moved in next door, and they believe in replacement theology. And we have neighbors on the left side of us that are Christians, and they believe in replacement theology. Do Muslims believe in? I've heard of Christians believing it. I don't agree with them, but now I've heard Muslims.
Yeah, and we're going a little different direction with your question here today. But there is a hatred for Christians and Jews. We'll just go that far here today. Other programs will, addressing more, getting into the theology. But there is a hatred toward Christians and Jews, and so therefore, to strike the necks is what they're instructed to do through the Quran. But thank you, Jim. We do have some booklets as far as witnessing to your Muslim neighbor that it would be very, very effective. We're going to squeeze one last call in. This is Mike in Rockford. Mike, you're on the air.
Yes, hello. I'm going to have a little perspective here that might, and I don't want, listen, I spent 24 years in the Air Force. I did 2 tours in Iraq. I was in Kuwait. I spent some time in Turkey and in Incirlik Air Force Base. I know all about Sharia law. I know all about Muslim life and the way they live, and they have destroyed Europe under the Sharia law. All these nations, Norway, Sweden, Germany, open their doors. And if you go to talk to anybody that's in those countries, I spent some time in Germany and as well when I was in the Air Force, and those countries are decimated, and Americans have no idea or clue at how bad it is. But I do want to say something, and I am a Christian, okay? I believe in Jesus Christ as my Savior, but I also believe, I read out of the Ethiopian Bible. The Jew, I don't ever want to say the word Jews because Jesus was an Israelite from the land of Judea. The word Jew didn't even become canonized.
I tell you what, Mike, you're going another direction. That's not where we're going. Do you have a specific question dealing with Sharia as it pertains to our topic today, Mike?
Well, yes, I do. My comment and question is...
Go right to the point, please, because we're almost out of time.
Yes. The Sharia law is got to be dealt with, but Americans need to realize how bad the situation is. But understand that the evil of all these powers are in the strength to allow everything that's going on. And Sharia law has been canonized I don't even know how to say this, but people have to wake up.
Indeed. Thank you, Mike, for the call. A comment that you'd like to make here, Frank?
Well, they do. And that's, I think, why I so appreciate this program, Jim, and what you do with other guests as well in elevating awareness about this really diabolical program that is insinuated into our country and is seeking to dominate it and force all of us to submit to it. If we understand it, and you and I were talking about this off air, if we understand it, as I think that 1.9 million Texan cohort did, you don't want any part of it, and you need to stand against it. And I hope you'll join us in doing so at bansharia.com. Take ideally both of these 2 initiatives. One, send off a letter to the State Board of Education. Do it today because they're meeting on all of this tomorrow. It's just a click of the mouse and boom, you'll do it. And secondly, insist that those who seek your vote understand what we're up against as well and pledge that they will keep it from being imposed upon you. That's a separate issue, a Sharia-free pledge. I urge you all to get it in front of candidates seeking your vote.
Again, that's bansharia.com. The website, Sharia is spelled Sharia, bansharia.com. And Frank, thank you so much for your writings, your vigilance on this issue, and sharing that important truth with our listeners today.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to do so, Jim. God bless you and all the great work you do.
And you as well. Frank Gaffney with us today. And friends, I'm sure we'll have this on a future program. But keep in mind the broad scope of this. Did you know that there's a National Muslim Advocacy Day coming up on Capitol Hill, April 20th and 21st? And there are groups that are calling Muslims to Washington, D.C. in order to advocate on behalf of Muslim issues with your members of Congress. Certainly, we need to be watchful of what is taking place in our world today, and as our guest has pointed out, not just observing it, but also to be actively engaged as well. God bless you, friends. Thank you so much for joining us today on Crosstalk.
You've been listening to Crosstalk via satellite and the internet from VCY America. Views expressed may or may not be those of this station. For a CD of today's program, send a donation of $6 or more to VCY Tape Ministry, 3434 West Kilbourne Avenue, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, 53208. Or download by RSS or podcast from crosstalkamerica.com. And join us again for Crosstalk.